Today we're going to look at React Native. What is React Native? We guys, most especially some of us are new with this technology. I know that there are some of us who have been very familiar with JavaScript, and as well as there are some of our brothers and sisters who are new in JavaScript. This tutorial or this series which we are going to cover are going to be favoring both of us. We are going to begin at a zero level until at a certain limit which we may reach. Well, React Native is a JavaScript framework for building native mobile apps. As we know, this today, the day-to-day generation, we are basing on mobile as a device which is largely used all over the world, and we know that most of the work is usually done on mobile phones. So they try to explain that React Native is not different like from the languages which we are using before, like Java, C Sharp, and so on and so forth. So it uses the React framework and offers large amount of inbuilt components and APIs. Well, React Native was developed at Facebook. As you see, if you try to visualize on the applications which are made at Facebook, for example, Facebook itself, it has some React components on its app. As well as Instagram, the design and the techniques, the animations which you see are far much more different compared to the applications which we generally use, most especially the applications which are made in other platforms. Also, there is another amazing app which we know, it's called Airbnb. This application also uses React Native as its development domain. Well, tools you need before you start. Well, I don't know, but this is just a summary. I know it's a little, but what you have to do for people who are going to develop Android, who are going to develop applications on Android platform, you'll need to install Android Studio. For those who have Mac, you'll need to install Android Studio as well, and Xcode. Another thing, there are some other modules which you have to install, but I'm not going to pass through them because it's a bit lengthy, but don't fear, it's easy. I'm going to provide for you a link. So this in the next this which I've written here in the table, any text editor, e.g. WebStorm or Sublime or Atom, you may choose any of those, but for me in this series I'm going to use WebStorm because a guy of IntelliJ, I like their IDE so much, and I've been a developer in Java as well as Android. I've been using Android Studio, and they are the same developers, so I'm going to be using WebStorm because WebStorm is a bit more good in terms of intelligence, and it is user friendly according to my side. So for those who won't manage WebStorm because it reaches a certain time and you have to pay for it, you can use Sublime or Atom. There are a couple of series which may help you to install Sublime or Atom to be able to start developing React Native applications. So, but for full installation, refer to this link, https facebook.github.io React Native. That's the link. Make sure that you follow those first 2 or 3 links which are provided on this link. They are just short of them, so make sure that you set up all your environment so that we be able to kick off this series when we are happy together. So, with React Native, what do you think about React Native? This is some of the small information which you have to know about React Native. You don't build a mobile app, a mobile web app. Here, you don't build a mobile web app or an HTML5 app or a hybrid app. You build a real mobile app that's indistinguishable from an app built using Objective-C or Java. I have talked about this. It's a bit quite different from an app which is built in Java, because we know JavaScript is a scripting language, and of course it can implement the object-oriented programming techniques, but in terms of scripting, React Native uses the same fundamental UI building blocks as regular iOS and Android apps. So React Native is not going to be much difficult if at all you had a good background before in mobile development. You just put those building blocks together using JavaScript and React, and then you move on, and you'll be able to come up with a marvelous application. I know it's sounding weird because React and as well as JavaScript, it's a bit scary, but if at all you have the heart, the passion, the love, the time, you'll be able to make it at the top. React Native features. What are some of the React Native features? Someone would ask himself a question or herself a question, or someone would like to know what are some of the React Native features. React is a framework for building web and mobile apps using JavaScript. So React as a word, it is just a framework for building web technologies, all web technologies and mobile apps using JavaScript. There is an advantage here. If at all you were in love of building web applications, a person who has learned React Native, it makes him very easy to bridge up himself to start building web apps with the help of React. And code sharing here code sharing is going to be very simple, because the concept is going to be 98% the same. So native, you can use native components controlled by JavaScript, because you know the word native as it means, because you can be able to share the things around that are suppose we are going to develop for both iOS and Android at once. So native, you can use native components which are controlled by the JavaScript. Platforms, React Native supports iOS and Android platform. So these are the platforms which are currently supported by React Native. The platforms are iOS and Android platform. So React Native advantages. What are some of the advantages which are offered by React Native? JavaScript. You can use the existing JavaScript knowledge to build native mobile apps. This is what I've been talking about, guys. That if at all we are using JavaScript in web technologies, because most of the people nowadays are using JavaScript in terms of developing web. So the logic here is not different, because here we're going to find ourselves, we're going to see some new techniques like the ES6 terminologies. These are the things which are going to be changing around, but they are not quite different or difficult. Just someone has to be able to pay attention, and as I've said, that you have to be having these three principles. You have to be having love, you have to be having the time, and then you have to be patient, so you will be able to reach the goal. So the second one is called sharing. You can share most of your code. You can share most of your code on different platforms. This is also another key point. Then the last one is community. The community around React and React Native is large. So this is another cool advantage, because we know that if suppose someone is stuck, can go to Stack Overflow and ask some questions to learn some new techniques, some new stuffs, and to be able to polish around his or her knowledge, and you will be able to find any answer you need. So don't feel shy, don't feel scary. This is the platform which is going to be able to make the next generation at the top. Well, another advantage, even though it is not here, I've been a developer in several platforms, but let me talk about these two. One, I've been an Android developer in with the help of Java. I've been using Android Studio. Android Studio is a good IDE, and it does it does good apps as well. But one of the disadvantages, Java currently cannot be able to make multi-platform applications. You can't develop two apps in Android Studio for both iOS and Android, and you know that this world today is containing both of those platforms, so which makes it a disadvantage on the other side. There is another IDE which I tend to use while developing applications. It is called Xamarin Studio, or for those people who are there, they might be using Visual Studio. The challenge which is with Visual Studio and Xamarin Studio is only one. It's one thing which I noticed about that. The thing is, it's not for free. You have to pay some money to get that IDE, and it's not legal at all if at all you don't have a license for that IDE. Most of the people crack it, but it's not legal at all. So JavaScript as a language, here it comes in. When it is free of charge, you can get some IDEs, whichever IDE you want, like Sublime. I've talked about Sublime. I've talked about Atom. You can use those ones for free of charge, and then you just be able to develop an application. But let me also emphasize it that in Visual Studio or Xamarin Studio, that's the that's the IDE I would recommend a person to go with if at all these things have become a bit difficult, because the way the things are done there, they are also too simple. So since today we're going to look at React Native, feel at home and we see what's next.